"Ma'am, ma'am!" The voice was barely above a whisper, yet it sliced through the quiet hallway like a sudden gust of wind. Pam Bondi turned, startled, heels clicking as she pivoted. Her eyes scanned the space until they landed on a small boy, no older than 7, standing alone. He had dark, tousled hair and a stare far too intense for someone his age. In his trembling hand, he held what looked like a crumpled piece of paper. "Yes, sweetheart," Pam asked gently, her voice lowering instinctively. The cameras, aides, and chatter around them seemed to blur into silence. "My name is X," the boy said, almost robotically. "I'm Elon Musk's son. I have something for you." Pam blinked. This child? Elon Musk's son? She crouched down slowly, curiosity now mixing with concern. "What is it, X?" He handed her the note with shaking fingers. She took it delicately, unfolding it as if it were a sacred artifact. Her eyes scanned the page. It read, "Sometimes when I look at people, I wonder if they still believe. Not in me, not in Dad, but in something more. Do you still believe, ma'am?" Pam's breath caught in her throat. The words were simple, yet haunting. It wasn't just a question, it was a mirror. And somehow this little boy, this son of one of the most powerful men in the world, had chosen her. "Who wrote this?" she asked, her voice cracking slightly. "I did," X replied, "but I asked my dad first." Pam swallowed hard. "And what did he say?" X looked away, then met her gaze again. "He said that grown-ups stop believing in what matters when they start believing in what doesn't." There was a silence so thick it hummed. Pam folded the note, holding it close. 100 questions ran through her mind, but one lingered louder than the rest. "Why me?" "What made you write this?" she asked softly. X's eyes flickered with something deeper than pain. "Because you looked like someone who used to believe, but now maybe you don't." The words hit her like a thunderclap in her soul. This wasn't about politics, or fame, or science. This was something deeper. How often do we wear smiles but carry silent questions in our hearts? How often do we pass by others, never knowing the battle they're quietly losing? And more importantly, do we still believe? Believe in goodness, in redemption, in truth, in something or someone higher than ourselves? Pam stood slowly, still clutching the note. X watched her silently, his presence oddly calming, like a whisper from another time. "Would you sit with me for a moment?" Pam asked. X nodded. And just like that, the hallway faded. The world paused. A boy, a woman, a note, and a question that would change them both. The hallway had been loud just moments before. Now sitting on a wooden bench near a tall window, Pam Bondi and young X found themselves in a quiet bubble of stillness. Light streamed in, warm and golden, brushing over the boy's face as if heaven itself was trying to see him more clearly. Pam still held the note. She'd folded it twice and tucked it into her palm, but the words hadn't left her mind. "Do you still believe, ma'am?" She turned to the boy. "X, do you know what belief means?" He nodded, then paused. "It means you hold on to something, even when you can't see it." "Who taught you that?" she asked. "My dad said it once, but I think Jesus said it first." Pam raised her eyebrows slightly, surprised. "You read about Jesus?" X gave a small smile. "Sometimes, but I talked to him more than I read about him." That answer wasn't expected. Not from a boy raised in the world of artificial intelligence, space rockets, and global headlines. "What do you talk to him about?" she asked, her voice soft, almost reverent. X looked out the window for a long moment. "I ask him if people still care, if they still see what matters, if I'm supposed to do something special." He paused. "Sometimes I ask him if I'm just a shadow in my dad's story." Pam's heart clenched. The vulnerability in those words, it was too real, too raw for a child his age. "You feel like a shadow?" she asked gently. He nodded. "Everyone talks about Dad's mind, his money, his missions, but I think maybe God gave me a different kind of mission." Pam studied him, not like a child anymore, but like someone carrying a message she hadn't realized she needed. "What kind of mission?" she whispered. X looked at her and said, "To remind people what they forgot. You see people like I do, right? I saw it in your eyes when you walked past me." Her throat tightened. "And what did you see?" "A woman who used to pray loud, but now only whispers inside." She had no words, none, because he was right. When had that fire dimmed? Was it in the courtroom? Was it during the long nights of political battles and public judgment? Or maybe when the world demanded more answers than she had faith to give? She blinked rapidly. X, why me? Why today? He shrugged slightly. I asked Jesus who to give the note to, and he showed me you. Pam felt the burn of tears. Her fingers curled around the note again, tighter this time. Have you ever had someone say exactly what your soul was screaming, without you ever speaking a word? And if a child can hear from God, what does that say about the rest of us? Maybe the real question isn't, do you still believe? Maybe it's, are you still listening? The silence stretched between them like a sacred thread. X's feet dangled off the bench, gently swinging, while Pam sat frozen in place, holding tightly to that folded note. She'd been given hundreds of letters over the years, some kind, some cruel, but none had ever felt like this. She cleared her throat. I used to pray every morning, even before I opened my eyes. X tilted his head. What did you say? She smiled faintly, the memory almost a whisper. I used to say, Lord, guide my heart before I speak. Let me see people the way you do. She blinked, looking away. But somewhere along the way, I started asking for strength instead of sight, victory instead of wisdom. X nodded like he understood. It's easy to forget who we're talking to when we're too busy fighting. Pam turned to him amazed. How do you know these things? He shrugged. Jesus told me once. He said, be still and know. But grown-ups don't like being still. That hit her harder than she expected. How long had she been running, arguing, defending, building walls to survive a world that rewarded toughness and punished tenderness? Do you ever get scared, X? She asked. He nodded slowly. Sometimes, like when the world feels loud and I don't feel heard. That was it. That was the heartbeat of the entire moment. A boy with Elon Musk's last name, who lived among the stars and code and constant noise, simply wanted to be heard. And suddenly, Pam realized, so did she. Do you think Jesus still hears me? She asked, her voice cracking with something that had been buried too long. X turned toward her fully. Do you think a mother stops hearing her baby cry, even when there are storms outside? She felt her heart break open right there. But I haven't spoken to him in a long time, she confessed. Not really. X leaned forward, whispering, then maybe he brought me to remind you how. She stared at him, overwhelmed. Would you pray with me? She asked, almost afraid of her own voice. X smiled. Only if you go first. Her hand reached for his. It was small, warm, and unshakably still. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like years, words formed from a place deeper than memory, from the soul. God, I don't know why you'd send a child to find me, but you did, and I think I forgot what it felt like to be seen by you. So, thank you, for this moment, for this boy, for believing in me when I stopped. A tear slipped down her cheek, and for a moment, it felt like heaven was listening. When she opened her eyes, X hadn't moved, but there was a peace in the air now, the kind that doesn't come from silence. It comes from surrender. Pam sat quietly for a long moment, hands still clasped around X's. The room hadn't changed, the world outside still moved, but inside her, something was shifting. You said God gave you a mission, she whispered, not sure why she needed to hear it again. What makes you so sure? X didn't hesitate. Because I asked him why I didn't feel like I fit in with the world, and he said, you weren't meant to fit. You were meant to light it up. She blinked. Light it up? Yeah, like when it's dark and even a small candle can show people where to go. He looked up at her. You used to be that candle, didn't you? The question dropped like a pebble into the depths of her memory. She remembered the early days, fighting for justice not out of ambition, but out of purpose. Fighting for the vulnerable, for the unseen. She had once wept in prayer for people she had never met. She had once believed her job was more than a title. It was a calling. And slowly, slowly, it had all become noise. What if I don't know how to light up anymore? She asked. X swung his legs again. Then you just sit with Jesus until he lights you again. Candles don't light themselves. Pam smiled through a tear. You make it sound so simple. Because it is, he said. Grown-ups just make it complicated. They think God only shows up in churches or books or sermons. He looked at her with eyes that seemed to carry centuries. But sometimes he shows up in hallways with a note. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that escapes before pride can stop it. "Can I ask you something, X?" she said after a moment. "Okay. What do you want to be when you grow up?" X paused, his eyes drifting toward the window again. "I used to want to build rockets like Dad. But now, I think I want to build people." Pam tilted her head. "Build people?" He nodded. "Help them remember who they are. Help them remember they were made by someone who doesn't make mistakes." The words settled into Pam like seeds. There was something about this child, no, this messenger, that didn't feel accidental. "Do you think people forget that a lot?" she asked. "All the time," he replied. "They look in mirrors and see failure, but God looks at them and sees future." She exhaled deeply. So much of her life had been spent trying not to fail, trying to stay polished, powerful, protected. But now she was just a woman, holding the hand of a boy who had somehow led her back to the God she thought she'd lost. The golden light outside had begun to shift into soft amber. Time had somehow slowed around them, and yet everything inside Pam felt like it was racing back through years of choices, regrets, victories, compromises. "You know," she said, eyes still fixed on the window, "I spent a lot of my life trying to prove I was strong." X glanced up at her. "And did it work?" She gave a soft laugh. "I think I got good at pretending. I had to. When you're in the spotlight, weakness isn't allowed. You build walls, you wear armor." He nodded knowingly. "But armor gets heavy." "Yes," she whispered, "and eventually you forget what it felt like to be soft." X looked down at his small hands. Jesus never wore armor. The words were like a match to her soul, simple, true, uncomfortable. She turned to him. "Why do you think he didn't?" X answered without hesitation. "Because he knew who he was. When you know who you are, you don't need to prove anything." Pam closed her eyes. That truth pierced through layers of performance and politics and pressure. She remembered how Jesus had washed feet, not ruled from a throne. He cried, he rested, he loved deeply. And even when rejected, he stayed rooted in love. "I think I forgot who I was," she admitted. "And I think I tried to earn what I already had, God's love." X leaned in gently, his voice almost a whisper now. "He doesn't make you earn it. He just wants you to receive it." She nodded slowly. "X, why did you really write that note?" she asked, not demanding, but needing to know. He looked up, eyes deep with something that seemed ancient. "Because last night I asked Jesus why people cry when no one is watching, and he said, 'Because they forgot I'm still watching.'" Pam couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They fell freely now, not the tears of grief or shame, but of release. All this time she had whispered into the dark, hoping someone, anyone, was listening. And today, in the form of a child holding a note, God had answered. She wiped her face and looked at X with something close to awe. "You're not just Elon Musk's son," she said. "You're God's child, and you're doing exactly what he made you for." X smiled, the kind of smile only someone with peace can wear. "I'm glad you remembered." They sat in silence for a few moments more. No one interrupted. No camera crews barged in. Just two people sitting in the glow of something holy. A hallway transformed into sacred ground. And then Pam asked one more question, one that had been rising inside her since the moment they met. "X, what did you write on the back of the note?" He blinked. "You didn't see it?" Pam turned the note over in her hand, and what she read next made her gasp. Pam's fingers trembled as she unfolded the note again and slowly turned it over. The handwriting was the same, small, uneven, but full of intention. One sentence, just one. "Even if no one claps, keep going. Heaven is already standing." She stared at it, stunned. The words pierced like lightning, not to wound, but to awaken. "Did you write this too?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. X nodded. "Jesus told me that after I had a bad dream. I felt small, forgotten. I asked him why no one saw me trying." Pam brought her hand to her mouth, holding in the sob that wanted to escape. She had lived a life under the gaze of the public, praised and criticized in equal measure. But still, she had so often felt unseen, uncelebrated, fighting for values that rarely got applause. And now this boy, this small, unexpected messenger, had handed her something more valuable than any medal or headline, a reminder that heaven was watching. "You have no idea what that means to me," she said, voice shaking. X tilted his head gently. "I think I do. God doesn't forget brave people, even when other people do." Pam stared at him, truly seeing him now, not just as a child or the son of a billionaire, but as something rare, a heart still unclouded by the world. "Why don't more people talk like you?" she asked, the question honest, aching. He smiled faintly. "Because most people are busy trying to sound strong. But God speaks loudest through gentle things." That did it. She let the tears come freely now, not ashamed, not hiding. It wasn't grief, it was gratitude, deep soul-level gratitude that someone, somehow, still saw her through the fog of her life. "You reminded me today," she said quietly, "that I'm not finished." "You're not," X agreed. "You're just getting started again." Pam stood slowly, and so did he. She looked down at the note once more before folding it carefully and placing it in her jacket, close to her heart. As they began to walk back toward the crowd, the noise returned. Staffers, voices, the press. The world resumed its rhythm. But something inside her had permanently changed. And then, just before she stepped back into her world of headlines and handshakes, she turned to him one last time. "X, how do you stay so close to God in a world like this?" He looked up at her, eyes full of innocent wisdom. "I don't try to be close," he said. "I just never walk away." She nodded, tears rising again, the good kind, the healing kind. "Don't stop writing notes," she said. "I won't," he smiled. "People forget, but I'll remind them." And with that, they parted ways. But one truth would echo long after. Sometimes God doesn't send thunder. Sometimes he sends a child with a note. And if you're quiet enough to listen, you might just remember how to believe again.